Hello and welcome back to Born to Rant. I'm Brandon, and this week we are here to talk about one of the strangest sequel decisions ever made. A movie that appealed to kids and pretty much no one else. And of course, the movie that gave us the Ninja Rap. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! Go Ninja, go Ninja, go! That's right, today we are diving deep into 1991's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. We'll look at the production process, its reception, why it still rocks despite its problems, and its legacy 35 years later. Now, this is an interesting movie for me to talk about because as a kid, this was hands down my favorite Turtles movie. But as an adult, I've realized that the only real reason it was my favorite is because this was the only one of the original 3 Turtles movies that I did not own on VHS as a kid. So because I hadn't seen it as many times, it just sort of became my favorite one. Ironically enough, this also happened with Star Wars and Return of the Jedi when I was a kid. But anyway, then I became a teenager and I actually went out and bought myself a copy of Secret of the Ooze on DVD, and I'll truly never forget putting this movie on after having not seen it in 5 or 6 years, and my teenage brain just being like, oh no, this kind of sucks.
Donnie, give it up.
And it does kind of suck, but it's also still pretty awesome. Obviously, it doesn't hold a candle to the original film's dark and gritty look or the themes of family and death. Honestly, where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles felt like a real movie, Secret of the Ooze feels like an episode of the animated series. But don't get me wrong, there's still plenty to love and enjoy about this movie, like the excellent opening pizza montage, Keno as a character, and then there are just like dozens of one-off lines in this movie that live in my brain rent-free, like,
I'm being punished, Anna.
There's still a little more stuff to help with, Michelangelo. What, son?
Mouth off.
But before we start diving too deep into why Secret of the Ooze is still worth your time, let's go back in time and learn a little bit more about how this movie came to be. And if you want the full context for this movie, I would highly recommend you pause this video and go watch the video I did recently on the first Turtles movie where we go over the characters' origins and everything else to do with that movie's production and post-production process. But here's just a quick recap. In March of 1990, the first Turtles movie was released into the world and became a giant hit pretty much immediately. It even became the 4th highest grossing movie of 1990s, so it makes sense that a sequel was put in the works right away. But what doesn't make sense is all of the changes that the studio made to the tone of the world after the success of the first movie. And the first change is that director Steve Barron was not invited back for the sequel. Now, this is because he went around the studio's back and tried to sell the movie to Disney, which got him fired right before the movie was released into theaters. But still, it seems obvious that Barron understood what made these characters work, and it sucks that they didn't bring him back. Now, the other big change from the first movie to this one is the lack of violence with weapons. In the first movie, the Turtles all use their weapons for fighting throughout the movie, but in this movie, we see Leo use his swords once and Donnie use his bow staff once. I guess you could say we see Mikey use nunchucks, but like they're
Combat conquered!
not even his real weapons. And this was done because after the release of the first movie, there was a lot of fake controversy about the violence in the movie. Parents were apparently complaining that the movie was too dark and violent for their kids, but I mean, the movie made so much money, it's hard to believe that anyone actually cared about the violence or that taming down the violence would lead to an increase in box office revenue. But what can I say? Studio heads are not known for being the smartest people in the world. Now, Secret of the Ooze was put into works pretty much immediately after the release of the first movie, even getting a $25 million budget up front, which was almost double the budget of the first film. Todd Langdon was again hired to helm the screenplay, and Mark Pressman was hired to replace Steve Barron as director. And at this point in his career, Pressman had directed quite a bit of stuff, mostly movies and TV movies, and from what I can tell, none of the things he worked on prior to Ooze ended up being much of a hit for him. So I'm not really sure how he landed this job, but it was clear that he was hired with the direction to make this movie more like the animated series and less like the previous movie. And I think that cinematographer Shelley Johnson also really understood this assignment because Ooze feels so much more sleek and polished than the first movie in nearly every way. As for the casting, Judith Hoag was not offered the chance to return as April O'Neil, and the official story has been that she complained too much about the insane shooting schedule, the difficult conditions, and the first movie's overall violent nature. But seriously, her not returning has always felt so ridiculous ridiculous to me, and she would end up being replaced by Paige Turco, who I do think does a pretty solid job in this movie. Elias Koteas would also not be brought back to be Casey Jones in this movie, though he would return for the third movie. Instead of Ooze having Casey Jones, the decision was made to create a new character for Eddie Reyes Jr., who had been the stuntman inside the suit for Donatello on the first movie. And apparently the producers just really liked Reyes, and before production even wrapped on the first movie, the producers told him that they'd be bringing him back as a real character for the second movie, which of course he took with a grain of salt, and then 6 months later a script turned up and he was actually in it. And fun fact, Secret of the Ooze is the only Turtles property to feature the character of Keno. As for the Turtles, Brian Tochi and Robbie Rist would return to voice Leonardo and Michelangelo respectively. But Corey Feldman was not invited back to voice Donatello after he pled guilty to a drug charge between the two movies. And I'm not sure why Josh Pace didn't come back to play Raphael, considering he was the only one of the original four to get to be both in the suit and be the voice actor. As for the guys in the suits, Michael Sisti and Leif Tilden would return as Mikey and Donatello, but Leo and Raph would be replaced by Mark Casso and Ken Traum, respectively. Kevin Clash would also return to both puppeteer and voice Master Splinter. And on September 29th, 1990, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze went into production with a $25 million budget, and much like its predecessor, it would primarily film in North Carolina with a couple of shooting days in New York. And the Jim Henson Creature Shop again signed on to take care of the costumes and faces, and actually the heads for these costumes are quite a bit more technologically advanced, with the animatronics actually being built into each head. And even though the Creature Shop did come back for the sequel, Brian Henson did not, because of how disappointed he was with the firing of Steve Barron, something that the Turtles creators Eastman and Laird also believed was a big mistake. And on March 22nd, 1991, the movie was released into theaters, and on its opening weekend, it would place first at the box office and make a total of $20 million against its $25 million budget. Unfortunately, Secret of the Ooze would only go on to gross a worldwide total of $78.7 million, which was quite a bit less than the previous film's worldwide total of $202 million. So this would end up being a bit of a financial disappointment for New Line, even though the movie more than made its budget back. A trend that would continue with the third entry just a couple years later, but that's a story for a different video. Apologies for the interruption, but I just wanted to jump in and remind you that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and I use absolutely no AI in the making of my videos. And if that means anything to you at all, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe to the channel. And with all of that out of the way, let's dive deep into The Secret of the Ooze and everything that makes it still worth watching today.
I thought you might want to know about this. Ooh, you guys! Hey, what's the big eye?
Can I hurt him?
I genuinely love the opening pizza montage, and it made me order pizza while I watched the movie, and again while I was writing the script for this video, so it's effective to say the least. And I also really like Keno's introduction. Now, did he need to make this fat joke? No, but the cackle he does as he rides off is incredible. This movie also lets us know up front that it's going to be a very different movie than the first one. We don't even see the first fight in that first movie. All we see is the boys in shadows, and yet that is still somehow way more violent than this cartoonish nonsense we get in the opening fight scene here. That may have sounded like me judging this movie, but I'm actually not. I love cartoonish nonsense. And I mean, this opening fight has so many fun and stupid moments, like Keno saying,
Did I mention I study martial arts?
Or Donnie doing whatever the hell it is he's doing here. And of course, Mikey and his
Combat Coconuts!
all of it just rocks, as does the intro of the title sequence. I just think it looks sick as hell with all four of them in the air like this. I've also always loved this awkward little scene that introduces us to new April and the fact that the Turtles are living with her. It's just so weird. On the other hand, I love how obnoxious the next scene is with the guys pretending to run.
Donnie, Statue of Liberty! Yeah!
And April clearly stressed out. Legitimately reminded me of how my mom would act whenever my siblings and I would be loud and doing something stupid. Now let's talk about TGRI just a bit, because this is such an interesting plot device. You see, in the comics, originally the Ooze is from a TCRI canister and has an alien subplot. And I bring this up because obviously the entire aliens plotline ended up being cut from the final movie, but I kinda dig the radioactive explanation replacement, if I'm being honest, if only because it gets us this great moment of the Foot Clan spy saying,
Dandelions.
which leads to one of the only deeper scenes in the entire movie, with Splinter deciding to finally tell the Turtles where they came from. And I like that Donnie is really frustrated by the randomness of it all, wanting to believe that there was something more to the story, something that would provide purpose. Unfortunately, the movie does absolutely nothing with this side plot. Let's also briefly talk about the ridiculous return of the Shredder. I mean, what is there to say? It makes absolutely no sense, and Eastman and Laird apparently fought to try and keep him from returning, but the studio preferred to stick closer to the animated show, something you'll probably hear me say at least a few more times in this video. But I love his dramatic hand reach up. I love Tatsu trying to act like a big shot only to immediately shrink back down when he sees the Shredder show back up, and I love the Shredder's sick new armor they make for him. Now, this movie does treat us to a lot of fight sequences, and for the most part, they're pretty fun, if not a little obnoxious. And the fight at TGRI is no different, although I do really like how the Turtles react to seeing the Foot Clan again, but this fight is just so over the top, with Donnie surfing on an office chair, while the boys are playing football with the canister, and David Warren's Professor Perry being kidnapped, and the story splits from here in kind of an interesting way. In this movie, we get to spend a little bit more time with the Shredder and get a look into his mindset than we did in the first movie, and I love his insistence that the Professor recreate the Turtles, and that the Professor can't help but protest as professionally as possible. And okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Toka and Razar. Obviously, they are stand-ins for the fan favorite characters Bebop and Rocksteady, and that makes some people very mad, but it was actually Turtles creator Peter Laird that kept them from being in the movie. So this is one of the only times you can be kinda mad at the creator and not the studio. But seriously, these characters are insane. I love how they interact with each other and their stupid voices, and of course the way the Shredder yells, "Babies! They're babies!" And the Professor saying,
"Okay, they're stupid infants,"
is something that will live in my brain forever for whatever reason. And these characters are dumb and obnoxious, but you know what? I don't care. I love them because they're dumb and obnoxious. As for our heroes, much like the first movie, Raph and Leo get into a fight and Raph storms off. This time though, instead of the wonderful drama of him being knocked into a coma, he just sneaks off with Keno to try and join the Foot Clan and gets captured. And oh, hey, look, I didn't realize Spawn was in this movie. Can we make this canon that in 1991, Al Simmons was living in New York and joining a ninja street gang, and joining the army is what got him out of his life of crime?
What do you mean?
I mean, both this movie and Spawn are New Line releases after all. Anyway, what else is there to say about this movie? I love the three turtles stumbling upon their new home. I've actually always really loved the design here, and I think this is probably the best looking shot in the entire movie. Also, I found out while doing research for this video that it's based on the City Hall station of the former Interborough Rapid Transit Company in New York. The station is decommissioned, but trains actually pass through there every single day still. Anyway, there's also this random ass Casablanca reference, and I truly don't know who this was for, but as an adult, it really made me chuckle. The first showdown at the junkyard is really fun, and the way the Turtles quip leading up to getting caught is one of the best moments in the movie.
The perimeter's quiet.
Yeah, a little too quiet.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, a little too easy.
It's Raph.
A little too Raph. You guys, knock it off.
And again, they kind of get their asses kicked here and have to run away. Plus, it's cute as hell when Toka gets trapped in the sewer opening. Now, the idea to bake an anti-formula into this sludge, freeze it, and then put it into donuts is really dumb but fun. I like the way that Razar figures it out almost immediately, but only after he and Toka have each eaten one. It's also so stupid that they beat them by shoving fire extinguishers down their throats. And okay, let's talk about the vanilla ice of it all. Did you guys know that Frank Miller ghost wrote the Ninja Rap? Actually, that's not true at all, but Wikipedia would definitely have you think it is. Shout out to Red Letter Media. Look, the Ninja Rap is stupid, and so is them dancing, but to me, as a little boy, I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. Well, almost, because obviously Super Shredder is roughly 1,000,000 times cooler than Vanilla Ice, but I hate that there's no real final fight between the Turtles and the Shredder. He kind of takes himself out. Mikey says,
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Man, I love being a turtle.
And then the movie ends as all good Turtles movies should end, with Splinter saying,
I made another funny.
So, 35 years later, what is the legacy of Secret of the Ooze? Well, it's obviously looked down on quite a bit in comparison to the first movie, but also I think there's a lot of love for this movie. I said in my first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video that I kind of prefer this one, even though the first one is better, and after watching them again back to back, I'm actually not so sure I stand behind that now. But I do genuinely still love this movie. The third one, not so much, but don't worry, we'll get to that in a different video. I think that really is the ultimate legacy of the movie. Compared to the first movie, it's just not very good, but on its own, it's a perfectly fun time hanging out with our favorite turtles. But let me know in the comments, which Turtles movie is your favorite? Do you wish Keno would show back up in the world of the Turtles? Which April do you prefer? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and as always, a special thank you to my supporters over on Patreon, who really help me keep this channel running. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, there's a link in the description below where you can learn more. Don't forget that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, so you liking the video and or subscribing to the channel really helps me out, and that's gonna do it for Born to Rant this week. Okay, thank you, bye bye.